Hello and welcome back to ME Studio Designs. Today I will be using a technique called Bkack Ice with the Dare to be Artsy Cheers layer set. This is the final card in my series of 3 for the December blog for Dare to be Artsy. Here you see the die set featured. It is a 3-piece die set that you can use separately or you can layer them together for a very elegant look. This is the frame. This is the outline for the word cheers and a very pretty script, very delicate for the actual word cheers. Today we are going to be using, like I said, a Bkack Ice technique. This is not something that I came up with. This is something that I wanted to try. I've been seeing it on YouTube a lot. A couple things you need: some foiled cardstock. You need some archival or alcohol-based permanent ink, so your mementos and things like that won't work. You can use archival ink by Ranger or Stays On. You're going to need some different papers for your layering. I'm not quite sure yet what I want to use on this card, so I just pulled out some things that I thought would coordinate with it from my stash. I have a piece of pattern paper, some glossy black cardstock, some rose gold that matches the card, a piece of vellum, and a piece of glossy white. So to prepare your surface, this is going to be a very easy 3-step process, trust me. You're first going to take your alcohol ink pad. Don't worry, you won't damage your pad. And you're literally going to drag it across the surface of your foiled cardstock. You're wanting to have the heaviest parts be the top and the bottom of your edges. And the key thing is just to remember as you're doing this, yes, it's going to look like a hot mess. You're going to ruin this very pretty paper. But trust the process. It will be stunning in the end. So I'm just going back, making sure I have a little bit more darkness. My pad was a little bit dry, so if you have a re-inker, you might want to do that, but don't make it too juicy. And once you're satisfied with the look, you're going to move on to the next step. The key thing here is to make sure that you completely dry your ink between each step. Next, I'm going to use some Versamark to then go over where I have the permanent ink. And you definitely want to make sure that it is dry so you do not ruin your embossing ink pad. So I'm going to actually hit this with my heat gun just to make sure that it's dry. Now, if you wanted to do any type of stamping on this is a no stamp card. I'm only using the die set, but you certainly can do that. You can stamp in that alcohol ink and make sure again that everything is dry between each layer. So now that I've hit it with the heat gun, just kind of straighten it out so it won't be as warped. I'm going to take my Versamark and you can either drag it across like I'm doing right now, or you can just lightly tap and press it down. Doesn't matter, just make sure that it's covered. If you need to put a little piece of double-sided adhesive to keep it from sliding, you can do so. Be careful not to get fingerprints on it. Now you're going to use an embossing powder. The key thing is to make sure that your embossing powder is clear. I'm using a chunky embossing powder because I want a more textured look. I'm using my little tweezers here to heat the embossing powder. Because my embossing powder is chunky, it tends to blow the granulars pieces off because they're really big. So what I'm just doing, I start under the bottom with the heat gun, make sure it's nice and hot, and that I start to melt it from the bottom and then finish it up on top so I don't have any open spaces. Look at that. Isn't that just absolutely pretty? I really love this technique, and like I said, I've been wanting to try it for a while. When you're done, it really looks like your foil cardstock is covered in a thin layer of ice, and using the black permanent ink gives you the title Bkack Ice. So I'm actually going to put everything away so I don't make a mess. And then I'm simply going to take a pre-folded 80-pound black cardstock base, and I'm going to layer the foiled mat on top. The card is measured at 6.5 by 5, and so I cut my mat down before doing the technique to 6.25 by 4 3/4, just so I can have about an 1/8 of an inch border all the way around so you can still see the card base. Now I'm going to cut out the different parts of the Dare to Be Artsy Cheers layering die set. Now, I'm not exactly sure what I want to use yet, so I'm just going to cut out a couple different options so that I can play around with it and see which combination I like. So I found a piece of pattern paper that matched the stash, that matched from my stash with some of the similar colors. I have a rose gold piece and the vellum piece right there, and I'm just layering those on top of each other. And then I have a piece of black glossy that I'm going to cut the cheers out on this first pass. And I'm also going to cut out the frame using a piece of black glossy. And I'm going to cut out the word cheers in a white glossy. Again, just to give myself some options. These dies cut very easily on the first pass. See, there's no problem with the vellum laying over the rose gold. So in the end, I'm just trying to see which combination I like the best. My concern about the pattern paper is that even though it matches, it could be a little bit busy, and I don't want anything to really take away from the beautiful shininess that is underneath. So just taking out the little bits from my ease, from my cheers die cut, and look how delicate that is. It's beautiful. So I'm trying at first layering it with the vellum, and very quickly didn't like that. The vellum just kind of made it a bit too dull. I was thinking, I want to go with the black glossy. The pattern paper just was a little bit too busy. So I tried that with the rose gold layering piece, shadow, and with the black glossy. Again, trying to incorporate that vellum to see if I can make that pop a bit more. And that didn't work. So I ended up going with the rose gold shadow with the white glossy word for the cheers. Now I was thinking to myself that this would be a great technique to try maybe with the white stays on a different color. I want to pop up the frame for the cheers away from the cardstock foil just to give it a little bit more dimension. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it horizontally or vertically. And one thing about your surface here, because it is so slick with the embossing powder, it's quite forgiving. So I'm just adjusting the placement, as you can see. Now I'm going to use my tape runner just to put some small pieces of adhesive for my layering shadow. And then finally I will use some liquid adhesive to adhere the cheers. For finishing touches, I'm going through my sequins stash, and I'm picking out various colors and shapes that I think will complement this card. The effect that I'm going for is as if someone has thrown up a handful of confetti when everyone shouts Happy New Year at midnight. So off to the side, I already have some clear and iridescent and white sequins, different shapes and sizes. And I'm going through my New Year's mix for some black and some copper that I think will complement the rose gold. And even into my orange stash here, where I have a few sequins that are iridescent and more coppery. And some of those are embossed square sequins that I absolutely love that I got from Cartwright. I just kind of make my own mixes based on different sequins that I pick up here and there. So as I'm picking out those final ones, I will then just go about placing them. My placement is not scientific at all. Basically, I know that I want to lay down some of the anchor pieces, which would be my few black sequins, and then I will fill in with the kind of copper and rose gold iridescent ones around that, and then fill in with the clear and the iridescent white. So I'm using a very strong matte adhesive, and you can use glue dots for this if you really don't want to wait for it to dry. So here is the finished card. And I just want to say thank you again to the Dare to Be Artsy crew and Cindy and Kendra. A special shout out. This was a great opportunity for me to be a guest designer for the month of December. Thank you so much. And here is a close-up look of the finished product. Thank you so much for staying and watching my video. Happy New Year to you and your family. And this is your Scrappy Mocha Diva, Mana Coco. Please help me reach 500 subscribers in 2019 by liking, sharing, and subscribing.